Hello everyone, welcome back to a philosophy podcast, or vodcast if you prefer. I wanted to talk about this idea of law of attraction, and I've always had a bit of a problem with this because it seems too simplistic, and in general I'm suspicious of any explanation for complex phenomenon like how human beings and the universe relate to each other. The outer universe and the inner universe relates to each other. Seems to me potentially very complex, and yet a law of attraction gives a very simplistic potential answer. So yeah, I'm initially always going to be a bit skeptical of that. And basically, for those of you who are not familiar with the law of attraction, essentially says that the inner state of the person will tend to be reflected in the outer world, particularly what's called vibration or emotional level, but also your thoughts, what you're concentrating on, what you're focusing on, will tend to manifest, meaning that they will tend to, things that are inside your inner world will tend to actually manifest in the outer world. For instance, visualization is a technique you could use to take advantage of the law of attraction by focusing internally on something you want, perhaps money or a car or a relationship, or even some internal thing like greater clarity, greater happiness, whatever it would be, and that there's this law of attraction which is going to help that come into reality, come into your physical reality. Now, actually, funnily enough, I believe that's true, and I know that visualization does work quite well. So does it work because of law of attraction, that the universe simply reflects what's happening inside you? And I mean, this is an old idea, it's not a new idea. I mean, I think it's Jesus, or certainly in the Bible, something said like, as without, so within, or as within, so without, I think is the actual quote. So that seems to be, in line with law of attraction, or it's sometimes called the secret. And also you've got positive thinking, which basically is based on a similar idea. Now, all these things, visualization, positive thinking, I know they do work, but whether they're actually changing the outer world, or whether by changing your inner world you're more open to opportunities that were always there, you're more able to see things that otherwise you don't see, whether visualizations, positive thinking, affirmations, all this kind of thing somewhat affect your actions, and it's your actions that then affect the outer world. This seems much more plausible to me than that somehow just by thinking, just by changing your attitude, that you can actually change the physical universe. Now, I'm also not convinced that the physical universe is quite as physical and quite as solid as, say, Western science would tend to think. and Western philosophy. So it's not that I'm prejudiced against that idea because of that reason. I just think that actions are also important, but also I find the law of attraction a little bit cold and a little bit mechanistic. I believe in some kind of spiritual, universal spirit, often called God, called Source. This word God has a lot of associations with it, particularly Christian, which I personally wouldn't want to buy entirely into. I would count myself as quite Christian in some ways, but in other ways not. I'm not going to get into the complexity of my religious views, but so I tend to be more of a believer in some kind of spiritual force, and for me it's an overall spiritual force. Source is a good word for it, I think, because with a capital S, because it's a little bit more neutral and it says it all. Source. I mean, it's the beginning of everything, yeah. So for me, source exists. Most likely, sometimes I'm more convinced than other times, and he, she, it. I want to say she right now. It's very loving, and I think if there's anything in charge of the universe and our relationship with it, and how our visualizations and thoughts and so on affect how the universe is, it would be Source. Yeah. So for me, you're boiling Source down. With the law of attraction, you're boiling Source, our relationship with Source, down to a very simple formula of, well, you think like that, and then that'll happen. Now, I know people who've had compulsive thinking about things, and it doesn't happen. We all do. I personally have had periods in my life where I've had years and years of negative thinking, and actually nothing particularly bad happened. Worrying, anxiety. So that seemed like the law of attraction wasn't working. Yeah, I mean, my outer reality was pretty normal, and I maintained it as pretty normal by my actions, So however bad my thinking was, I was still able to act in a way that, I could hold down a job, keep myself clean, eat food, blah, 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 and keep my reality in a relative order, even though my inner world was extremely disordered. And I think this is seen all over the place. And I know people who've had mental illness, that their apparent outer world isn't particularly disordered, but their inner world is a mess. Yeah. And equally, I think we see sometimes people who seem to exude a kind of peace and wisdom, and their outer world can be quite different than that. And people talk about, well, there's a delay between your inner world and your outer world, a buffer delay, but then what exactly is that buffer delay? Because unless we have an exact timing for that, then that gives a flexibility, such a flexibility that we can't really talk about cause and effect anymore. Yeah, I mean, if the buffer zone is 10 minutes, then if we don't see an effect after 10 minutes, then law of attraction isn't real, isn't mechanical at least. And if it's 10 years, but we see the buffer's 10 years, but we see effects earlier, it's not due to the law of attraction. Yeah. So So it's a bit of a problem, I think, that the buffer zone or the delay between what you visualise and what actually comes into your life is quite flexible. And there's good reasons why it might be. This makes it very, very difficult for anyone to rationally test law of attraction. And I think a lot of these things then lead me to think, well, it's not a law in the sense that we normally think about it, like in physical laws. And so that's not an appropriate word to use for it, a law of attraction. Maybe a rule of attraction would be better. And it's most often said to be the most fundamental law of the universe. Yeah, so already that's not correct. It's not a law unless you can establish a pretty strong cause-effect relationship with the timing. So it's not a law. And I would say our relationship with Source is much more complex and much more based on love than the law of attraction seems to imply. Love doesn't just see what a person's inner world is and then reflect it to them in the outer world. Love sees what a person's inner world is and then sees what would perhaps help that person in their outer world. Yeah, and this is somewhat different. So I've called this the law of love. And this may indeed be a fundamental law of the universe. That Source is love, basically. I mean, as close as we can understand Source. I mean, we're talking about something that may be somewhat beyond our comprehension, but we can understand love, and most of us. And so Source is love, and our relationship with Source is love. Basically, mainly from Source, and that's regardless of what we feel about Source, what we consciously think about Source. Source will not reject us for any reason, in my opinion. Cannot and will not cease to love us. And so, for me, the law of attraction should be called the law of love. And Source trying to help us to reach higher levels of happiness and strength in ourselves, and completeness and self-actualization and good relationship with Source and with other people, and love. So this is what the law of love says, that's what the universe is trying to do. It's trying to give us experiences which will help lead us to these things, these goals that Source has for us. Not for itself, it doesn't have any needs or requirements itself. So, in my opinion. So it's for us, and it's driven by love. So, well, I hope this has been an interesting video for you. Thank you very much for watching, and please give a thumbs up to the video, and have a look at my book. You can read quite a lot of it for free. So thanks very much. See ya. Bye.